Randolph loved backpacking. He loved going to different countries with nothing but a huge backpack, money, and a thirst for seeing the world. He had backpacked through Vietnam and Thailand, walked from Germany to France, and even spent a weekend in London. One day, Randolph announced that he was going to Italy. This has been a dream of his ever since he was a kid. He had always dreamed of going to Italy and experiencing what he called authentic pasta and pizza. So, he packed his bag, saved a hefty budget, and took the early plane to Italy. Just being in the city of Italy was something beyond Randolph's imagination. He saw the beautifully carved statues and architecture, and if that wasn't enough, the taste of authentic Italian cuisine was perfect. As he walked around the city, he began to notice the clouds were getting darker and water slowly dripping to the ground. He then realized that it was rain, and if there was one thing he had forgotten, it was to find the nearest hostel to stay at. What's worse, his phone was low on battery, and the spare power banks he had were low on battery as well. Randolph needed to find a place to stay for the night, so he began to walk along the streets of Italy to find the nearest hostel for the night. But because he had no idea where he was headed, he had a hard time finding one. And while his Italian was all right, it was hard to speak to some of the locals if he didn't know the name of the hostel. He was almost ready to throw in the towel and sleep in one of the train stations when he was approached by a man. The man looked to be dignified and well-dressed. "Hello there," he said, speaking with a heavy Italian accent. "You are not from around here, sir?" Randolph nodded his head. The man continued, "My mistress houses travelers for the night. Would you be interested?" "All right," Randolph said. The man then led Randolph to a car that was parked to the side. Randolph saw that the car was a vintage model. As they drove along, the man introduced himself as Luca and that his employer, Signora Franca, was a well-known socialite who enjoyed listening to stories from travelers. Randolph felt a bit calm and somehow relaxed after hearing that statement. They soon arrived at a large white house in the middle of the piazza. It had huge marble columns and large stone motifs like flowers and festoons all over the wall. The doors were made up of two massive oak panels. Luca then led Randolph to the main door and escorted him inside. Signora Franca was a woman who looked to be in her late 60s and was dressed in elegant black. She had pearls all over her person and something of a turban on her head. She welcomed Randolph and began to chat with him while Luca prepared his sleeping quarters. "Thank you so much for allowing me to stay," Randolph said. "I forgot the name of the hostel I was supposed to stay and my phone battery was getting low." "It's no problem," Signora Franca said in a very dignified voice. "So Luca tells me you are a traveler. Whereabouts are you headed, Signor?" "I'm just exploring Italy," Randolph said. "Nowhere in particular." After having dinner, Randolph was shown his room, and after thanking Signora Franca, he drifted off to sleep. The next morning, he woke up and after a delicious breakfast, thanked Signora Franca once more and headed out of the White House into the streets of Italy to continue his trek. Around midday, he was able to find the hostel he initially booked and checked in. He then thought of visiting Signora Franca, so he walked to where the White House was. Upon approaching the piazza, he saw to his astonishment that the White House was nowhere to be found. In fact, where the White House had been was now an empty lot. He then noticed a man and walked up to him. "Excuse me, what happened to the White House there?" The man looked at him with a confused look. "Pardon?" he asked. "I stayed in the White House that was in between those two buildings, and now it's gone." He pointed to the empty lot. "Signor, there is no house there," the man said. "There used to be a White House, but it hasn't been around for decades." Randolph would then learn from the man that Signora Franca was a socialite back in 1938. While she was a regular at most parties, She was also known to have aided several Jewish families and hid them in her home, which was known as the White House because of its pure white facade. However, on August 13, 1943, the city was bombed by Allied forces, and every building, including the White House, had been hit. Signora Franca and her staff did not survive. It's been said that many people claim to have been invited into the White House whenever they need a place to stay and were accommodated by the generous and elegant mistress of the house. When they leave the house and intend to return, it's nowhere to be found.